you are not consciously choosing to be rich, excellent, and healthy, then you're unconsciously choosing to be poor, mediocre, and unhealthy. And you look at somebody that's going to a job day after day, week after week, year after year that they can't stand. How conscious is that person living?
Today, I have a very special guest for you, Joseph Drolshagen. He is an amazing entrepreneur. Guys, I cannot wait for you to hear his story. Joseph, let me get this right, because let me tell you his bio, guys. He is the best kept secret in the avenue of rapid business growth and scaling businesses. So if you are a business owner, you want to take note of what this guy has done. All right. So aside of a very successful 28-year career of VP sales, Joseph has spent over 3 decades. That's right. 30 years implementing and developing what is known as the suspicious mindset training, which I'm very intrigued with. And it has repeatedly allowed hundreds of people to create the life they desire. Okay, so you guys want to take note of this guy. He is well accomplished, but we all know that he did not start there. And so, Joseph, our audience wants to know what went wrong.
Absolutely, Tabitha. It's great to be here with you and excited about this conversation. You know, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, in a very low-income, blue-collar family. I watched my mom and dad, you know, they stayed married to death did them part, but I watched them just beat themselves up, and I saw the toll that all that struggle took with anxiety, with health, with their relationship, even time with us as kids. And I remember at 9 years old thinking, man, I'm not living like this. This isn't right. You know, I spent a weekend over our friends, and his dad gave us $20 to go to Dairy Queen, you know, and ride our bikes up there. My family, we had to save up to do that, you know. And so as I'm going through this, I'm going, man, this isn't right. Well, then I got into my adult years and I got into, you know, and so anyways, so if something came easy to me, I thought I didn't earn it because I didn't work hard enough for it. And I had that mentality built into me. And so as I did that, as I started moving through that area, you know, I was conditioned, I was taught that a man gets a job and supports a family and hopefully lives long enough to enjoy some retirement. I did not have any desire to go into the auto mecca. I didn't have a desire to go into corporate America. I wanted to impact people's lives, you know, one-on-one. And so as I'm doing this and building this career in corporate America, I'm just getting more and more and more lost in it, to the point, Tabitha, when I was 27 years old, I was married at the time. My wife and I had 2 pregnancies. And those pregnancies, the babies were born at 24, 25 weeks, and they'd live for hours on this equipment, and then they passed away. And then the 3rd pregnancy we had was my son. And so when I say I adore him, like, he is such a blessing in my life. And then we experienced 2 more pregnancies like the first 2. So at that point, I was already doing some of these works and trying to figure stuff out, but I was in corporate America. I built up multiple levels there and stuff. And on that child's first birthday, with how special he is in my life, I wasn't back in Warren, Michigan, where I lived at the time, celebrating that with them. I was in Indiana building a sales territory because I thought that's what a man was supposed to do. And to this day, that hurts my heart to talk about that. And I miss that day, and we have a great relationship, him and I, but I will never, ever get a chance at that day again. You know, at that first birthday, I forfeited that following conditioning and beliefs that weren't even freaking mine.
Right.
And in doing that process, after we lost the last 2, I didn't know what to do. I wasn't equipped at that time. And I just walked away from God. I walked away from like anything, you know, like I still with my son and it's still married time, but like I just walked away from any of that stuff, any of the stuff I had been doing now for almost a decade. I just walked away from it all into darkness. And when I did that, alcohol helped me to cope with life through that phase, you know, and over the next decade, I would use alcohol to the point where I lost vehicles, I lost jobs, I lost, you know, promising careers and things like that I never really wanted anyways. But right. To go through that side, go into that gutter of life. And it put me at a point where it was either ask for help or die. You know, right. And I was somewhat suicidal at that time and just really, really emotionally messed up. And so I did. I took the option of asking for help that I always thought my whole life was a weakness. It became a power. and it started infecting me in different ways and adjusting my life and bringing things forward. And through that process, I got back into getting coaching and understanding this stuff and everything that's happening now that I already had an idea around what mindset was, the difference between the conscious, subconscious, all that stuff and everything. Right. And as I started learning that, it brought me to the point of my life changing in ways that I could not have accomplished on my own.
Did you know the number one way to build wealth is through real estate? Have you always wanted to buy your first income property, but you didn't know where to start? Join my group, Legacy Wealth Builders, where we will teach you how to buy your first income property and then keep your wealth by teaching the success and wealth principles to your kids. Because it's not just about building your wealth, but it's about keeping it for generations to come. So click the link, join our group, because for the month of June, the group is free. So get all the training you need and join the group now. So let's take it back just a little bit.
Okay.
When you were dealing with this and you would turn to alcohol, take us through that a little bit, because the reason why I ask is because I have interviewed, I think, close to 27 or 28 entrepreneurs for this show. And several of them were like you. They were ambitious. They were driven. They were doing what they thought they were supposed to do, but it was somebody else's dream. And they hated what they were doing. But on the outside, it looked successful. Mm-hmm. And they turned to alcohol.
Yeah.
Or some other substance. Usually that was just the gateway substance, right? But they turn to that and they lose everything. And we hear these stories. And I know there are people listening because I lost my sister to alcohol in 2018.
I'm sorry to hear
so that. I have been witness. I don't like to say victim. I've been witness to what this can do and why sometimes alcohol takes them. And sometimes, like you said, I was either going to do this or I was going to turn away and I was going to do that. Yeah. And you chose this, which is why you're here today. But there's some people that are on the fence. Yeah. Or maybe they're just starting to turn to alcohol. You know, with everything post-COVID, people, I feel like, are more confused than ever. Do I want to do this job? But now I was able to work at home and I like being involved with my family. But as a man, because me and my husband have these conversations, I'm supposed to provide, but I'm supposed to be the husband. I'm supposed to be home, but then I'm supposed to earn the income. And all of these conflicting thoughts, I'm just going to numb myself with porn, with alcohol, with whatever,
gambling, whatever
that, substance is. So just take us back a little bit there, because I think a lot of people can say, oh yeah, I turned alcohol and then I got better. But I know from experience, it wasn't that easy and it wasn't that glorious, like when you were in that moment. So can you just take a little bit back so you can connect with those people that might be struggling, or they might know somebody that's struggling with that?
Yeah, a big part of it for me was I could not get clarity. I could not comprehend life as it was happening. I couldn't, like for me, the 4 pregnancies, I had no way to comprehend that, and I couldn't figure that out. But even beyond that, the whole thing is, here I am living this life that's so far away from me and what my desires are and what I thought like I would accomplish and do in my life and stuff, and even though I continued to get promotions and I went to college and got my degrees and I did all the stuff they told me to do to get those promotions, and every step I took led to that promotion, and I couldn't stand it. It got darker and darker the further I went with it. And alcohol, it started out as something I would do and just enjoy and things of it and stuff like that. And it got to a point where I'd start and I don't know where I would stop. I was never an everyday drinker and stuff like that, but I would drink and sometimes I'd be able to stop at 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And sometimes it would go to, blackout type of stuff. And I never knew at the start what it was going to be. And it really brought me to a point, my whole life, I was raised in the era of John Wayne. Mm-hmm. And every male is supposed to be like John Wayne. And it took me so many years to realize he wasn't even freaking John Wayne as we knew him when the camera wasn't on him.
Right.
But we're modeled that, and it was modeled for us, and that's how we do it. And you got to figure it out. And I could not figure it out, Tabitha. As much as I tried, as hard as I leaned into things and tried to figure, I could not figure it out on my own. And one of the things that alcohol really did for me is it beat me down beyond what anything else could, to put me at a point where asking for help didn't seem like the worst option. And I missed a lot of work time. I got let go from jobs. I had a very promising career from a corporation for over eight years. Every 2 years was promoting me to another level, right, and doing different things and everything else. And I just gave all that away because of the alcohol. It was like, go on.
No, it just sounds like it brought you to humility.
Very much. It brought me to my knees. I mean,
yeah. And I think that's where, women have this too. It's a very strong woman, but especially men, like you said, you're supposed to do this. It's a pride thing. Like, I don't need help. I don't need to ask for help. I don't need therapy. What's that talk stuff? And let's be honest, in our culture, to have a drink after work or 7 is totally acceptable. Like, that makes you look almost, regal, after work, you have your scotch or whatever. Like, that's what it is. And in reality, it's masking everything that you truly are.
It absolutely does. And what alcohol did a good job for a while is help me to live outside of who I really was.
Right. It's tolerable because, I'm going to have this drink. I can relax.
I can play the role.
Right. And it's acceptable. It's fine. As long as you weren't like a sloppy drunk every single time, you can just really mask all of those feelings and get through another day, get through another Groundhog's Day. I don't have to deal with the emotion of losing a baby, especially, okay, it's hard enough for women who have these, not even stillbirths, like even births where the baby lives for a few hours, but especially like a stillbirth or a miscarriage. Mm-hmm. People who've never went through them, they don't understand, like, that baby is real that baby's real especially to that parent. That is their child. They lost a child. You lost 4 children.
Yeah.
And men, especially because you don't carry the baby, that's a whole lot of emotion that,
and add to that we're taught to be protectors.
Mm-hmm.
And how the hell do you protect somebody you're in love with from being as hurt as what those cause?
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine.
You walk around, for me, I walked around and I started to feel inadequate.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Like, that, just what you saw your wife go through. My husband, we have 5 kids. And so even every labor and delivery, he was like, I felt so helpless.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't do anything. And I'm like, you just being there was awesome. But, like you said, protect, and you're supposed to find the solution, and I'm supposed to have all the answers and all these contradictory thoughts, especially for a male. That's a lot of weight to carry. So I look at this, I look at people, and it's in a so non-judgmental way. Cause like I said, I went through this with my sister. I had an uncle who was an alcoholic. It's in my family. And I look at this in somebody who is struggling with that. And I'm like, there's always a saying, it's like, hate the sin, love the sinner. Yeah. And my heart goes out because I know they're hurting. Yeah. Like, when I see this, I'm like, you don't want to drink because you feel good. Like, you want to drink so you feel good.
Yes. That is such an important differentiator. And I'll tell you, when I work with it, like when I meet a new client, if they drink, even occasionally, I have them stop for the time we work together.
Yeah.
And here's why. If there is some pull to the addiction of it, you need to break that. And if there's not, you don't really need it, and you can have more focus into what you're doing to change your life.
Right. Because alcohol, no matter what, 1 drink or 10, it alters your state. So if you're trying to accomplish a goal, you need to be able to stop that for that purpose, for that way. So, that's so insightful. Like, this is such a touchy subject. I know for men, even women, but I know women were encouraged more to talk about it, and it's a little more acceptable. But, where are the men in this? When that woman loses that baby, or that guy loses the job, or he's supposed to be this specific role, and that doesn't necessarily fit the desire. So you're in this, and that moment that happened where you were like, I'm either getting help or I'm dying. Like, those are the things. Was there something that happened? You said you even had suicidal thoughts. Was there something, did you think of your son? Were you married are you still married? Were you married at the
No,
time?
I'm not married any longer.
So did this was this the riff, or was it something else, if you don't mind sharing? Like,
Yeah, I think it was just we got married really young. We weren't really meant for each other, and we went 20 years in a marriage and stuff like that.
That's what I'm asking. Like, that's a long time to commit.
Yeah, and that tore me apart as well. And that happened right after I quit drinking and started stepping into the solution and stuff. So that was really hard dealing with that. But there was I want to say it was a month, but I'll say 3 weeks when I slept with a loaded handgun on the pillow next to me, hoping I would wake up and have the guts to use it. Now, because now I'm stopping drinking and it's even blacker, it feels like.
Right. It's darker than it was even then.
Yeah. Because I didn't have anything to cover it up with.
Right. That just brings me to a comment. One of my friends, her brother was an alcoholic and he stopped drinking. And his mom said, I almost liked it better when you were drinking, because then I could just blame you being an a-hole on the alcohol. And now you're just mean. Like, there's no alcohol to cover it up. And I don't think people realize that when you give up the alcohol, you have to face the demons. You have to face who you are, like what you've become, the road that you've done. It's not judging. This is just what you have to look at. And that's really hard. That's why most people start drinking, because they don't want to look at the mirror image, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And I've been sober a little over 17 years now.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, it's not me. It's a blessing that was, but I am, my big part in it was asking for help. But I work with a lot of people now who they get sober and their spouse is like, well, I like you less now than I did when you were drinking. It's because we set up those dynamics through the drinking that become a game of its own, in a sense, a way of life. But and it's hard. It was really, really hard. Even starting looking at myself and doing the stuff I was doing in my early 20s, it was really hard to face those things and really look at, like, truly, who am I?
Right.
Who am I without the alcohol? Who am I with having who am I, with the 4 deaths? Who am I with being divorced now? Who am I, and really looking at that. And I will probably spend the rest of my life having to do that.
Well, yeah, because it's your identity. It's how you identify yourself on this planet. And I think that's always changing, ebbs and flows. As you get older, as dynamics come in, relationships come in and go out, and businesses fail and succeed, or your careers or whatever. And I think it's important to know, you're a believer, and most of my listeners are believers. And it's not about who you are, it's about whose you are.
Yes.
So when you're grounded in whose you are, meaning God, like you're his child,
yes,
then your identity becomes less about just the selfish ambition and what am I truly meant to do here? How can I bring glory to him? What am I doing in the ebbs and flows, even with the alcoholism? What story, what life can I save by sharing this on the Tabitha Thoreau What Went Wrong podcast?
Yeah.
For him, because there's people that are listening that might not be believers. And I hope there's people on here so they can put their hope in something else.
And the big part of that, when you said about changing in our identity, it's not about those for me. I didn't know that for a long time, but it's really been about becoming more authentic to who I really am and who I was supposed to be, the intention of why I'm here. And that's what I love about the works I do today, because I ultimately help people live better lives, and I can't do that of my own. I wouldn't have come up with the SMT method and things like that on my own. Yeah. It was God driven. And the fact that everything I do relates back to the Bible, it's helping people to open up that side of themselves so they can realize who they really are, not all the bullshit, excuse my language, that we've been conditioned and told and our experiences and all that person that builds.
Right. You should have done this. This is what you're supposed
to be. Clearing all that away. And who really am I?
And I love Christians, but a lot of Christians are that way. They're like, well, you're not supposed to talk about money and you're not supposed to do this. And this is what my interpretation of this is. And you're supposed to do this. And if you really love Jesus, you wouldn't wear that shirt. And if you really love, and it's like, let's take a step back here, because I'm pretty sure that God created me and I am one with him, and I will trust him speaking to me, not you speaking to me. So
that's one of the things too. We hear that all the time, thou shalt not judge.
Right. Right.
And really, as I started looking at me and in my head, how messed up I was, and I start seeing these things happening, and I start understanding the subconscious and how that plays a role, and putting and all this stuff coming together, almost like for me, like, unfolding is, I no longer had time to put any focus into judging other people.
Right.
You live your life the best you can. It's none of my business. And I'm going to do the same thing in mine. Because what that did is it helped break some of that conditioning of other people having a voice into how I should be living. I don't know how many people, and it literally convinced me that I should be on cloud 9, making the corporate money I was making, having a company car, a golf course membership, all these things and stuff. I went to the golf course one time and I was like, this isn't me. This doesn't fit for me. I don't enjoy this. So living that, but everybody says, man, you're so blessed. You have everything you want. And I was dying inside, literally dying inside. Now today, Tabitha, I can look and see where all those years of corporate was necessary for me to learn and grow through to be able to do what I do today. But at that time,
right,
I was just miserable.
Right. Yes. So much of that, like, there are people on here that you're in a job or a relationship that either needs mending or whatever. And like with that job, it brought you to where you needed to be, but now it's time to say goodbye. And you need, it's like, it's whatever that is for you. It's time to say, stop the people pleasing, stop the whatever it is for them, and move into what they're called to do.
The name of my corporation is IFGT Coaching Consulting. The IFGT literally stands for it's freaking go time.
Nice.
Quit playing small.
What you do.
Go on. Yeah. So what I do is through my learnings and everything else, I've come up with this understanding. We have a conscious mind. That's what we focus on, the words, all that stuff and everything. But then we have this subconscious. And all it does is it absorbs what's in the conscious. We all know about that and stuff. But it stores away every pattern, every paradigm, every experience. And Tabitha, you don't even have to have the experience. If somebody you believe in tells you about something, you'll build that and it be embedded into that network. And you've never really experienced it yourself. Our beliefs when we're growing up are taught to us, and we will live so hard through those beliefs and never test those beliefs but yet we've never experienced them for ourselves outside of that, And so that motherboard, I call it, in the subconscious is what triggers our brainwaves to the actions we take or that we don't take. So somebody that has limitation in their financial struggles, things like that and stuff, that was another really big one for me from where I came from. But they will continue to not take the actions that will get them out of the financial struggle because it's so embedded in that network. And so it will not trigger the brain waves to take the actions to get us out of that. So what we can do is we can go in there and identify that and shift that to open up those avenues. And that's how I help business owners, sales professionals, realtors, insurance, whatever it is, anybody really, to really like quickly grow outside of what they've been able to achieve, because we start realigning the subconscious conditioning. And as we do so, it starts opening up the doorways to experience greater results with less effort, without all the massive actions, exhaustive efforts, and all the stuff that even that is conditioned into us.
Right.
If you want something, you got to work hard. You got to be willing to trade off your life. You got to be I refuse to do any of that. And now with my coaching business the way it is, and 4 years in a row, top business coach in the United States, and all these things that are happening, it wasn't done through that manner.
Right. It was your center. That's what you were called to do. People don't realize when you do what you're called to do, it takes less effort and less energy. It energizes you instead of de-energizes you.
But again, without realigning that conditioning,
Right.
I know a lot of people doing what they've always wanted to do their whole life, and they're miserable and they're killing themselves and everything else because of that conditioning. And so when I shift that, and I've helped almost 1,000 clients to date over the past decade.
Oh, I love that.
And every one of them, I mean, experiencing strides like from a job that they're miserable in to having a successful business that's doing like $45,000 a week right now, within 1 year. Or people who are, $7.5 million revenue in 13 years in business, within 12 months are able to almost topple over 23 million. I mean, it's unrealistic, the results that people achieve, but it's unrealistic that I'm right here talking to you right now. It's unrealistic to where I grew up and how I grew up and the conditioning I had and everything else that I would even be speaking on this. It's unrealistic. But we all have that availability to open it up. And one of my favorite quotes is by Wallace Wattles. And he says, if you are not consciously choosing to be rich, excellent, and healthy, then you're unconsciously choosing to be poor, mediocre, and unhealthy. And you look at somebody that's going to a job day after day, week after week, year after year that they can't stand. How conscious is that person living? Wow. They're just unconsciously going through the modes over and over and over again.
I think you can go to any store in America and see that with people just living those unconscious lives. It reminds me, if you haven't read the book Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, he talks about that. I mean, and it's a different context, but read it. And that's what it reminds me of. It's like people just live in this like almost zombie state of like, this is what it's supposed to be. This is what it has to be. So, well, thank you so much, Joseph. We will have all the links to like your website and anything else that you want will be in the description. Guys, check us out on YouTube, every podcast platform. Don't forget to leave a comment, rate us, and share it. Share this episode. If you guys know that this episode could touch someone's life, especially if you're dealing with someone who's struggling with alcohol. It's a very nonchalant, non-judgmental way to just be like, hey, you should listen to this podcast, because it might trigger something in them to go get the help that they need, because we all love those people and we don't want to judge them, but we want them to get help. And if you're that person, don't be afraid to reach out. Joseph, what was the one thing, I was going to ask you this, you said you slept with the gun on the pillow. Was there one thing that just really shifted it for you that was like, was it a person? Did you reach out to somebody? What was that, like that moment that just, you were like, nope, I'm never touching alcohol again? And what helped you get through that?
Thoughts of my son.
Okay.
Who was 4 states away at the time, but yeah. Yeah.
So tether to that. Yeah. Tether to that, guys. Remember that you serve a purpose. And I'll tell you this from experience. There are people that love you in your life. Yeah. Don't believe the enemy that you are worthless and the world would be better off without you, because that is not true. And we want you sober and healthy and building businesses and having kids and loving life, right? So Thank you guys so much. And if you are, like I said, going through the what went wrong, remember to reach the what went right. Just stay persistent. Reach out. You've got this. We love you. Until next time. Bye, guys.